The story begins with our protagonist Kenji, who is a kind person. He always helps people in need. When he was going to school like any other day, he heard some bullies bullying a student who was in his class. The bullies called Kenji and told him that the guy they were bullying didn't have a mother. He only had one picture of her which they were going to tear into pieces because he didn't have money to pay them. If Kenji didn't buy those pictures for him, they were going to tear it for real. Kenji was furious and tried to talk things out, but they only listened to him when he gave them $100. They make it look like they weren't doing anything bad. They were being fair. The kid who was being bullied thanks him and calls him kind, which makes him very happy. Then the kid asks Kenji why he was trying to be so kind. Kenji told him that he needed to do it to this extent because he had a reason. When he arrives at the school, everyone greets him cheerfully. He is happy to see a girl named Sujin, who greets him as well and asks for his help in throwing the trash bags. She praised him for helping out their classmates and told him how everyone in the class was talking about this. He was glad to hear her say that about him. Just then, we see the bullies who were playing games with the money that he extorted from him. Shin Jae-young, the thug from earlier, calls Sujin. Sujin hesitantly greets him. She looks troubled, which makes Kenji think that they are bullying her. The bully calls for her again and tells Kenji to get lost. Sujin assured him that she would be all right and told him to go on ahead. Kenji was confused as to what he should do. He wonders if he should call his uncle if the situation escalates. After he was gone, the rest of the thugs also went to their class, leaving those two alone. Sujin wants him not to make it obvious when they are inside the school. We came to know that these two were secretly dating. While they were flirting, we see that Kenji was still there, hiding from them. He was fuming with anger and felt betrayed. When he came back to his class, his eyes were dead from what he had seen. He messages Suhin to meet him after school as he has something to talk to her about. When school ended, they both were going to go home together like they used to before. Kenji finally mustered up the courage to ask her if she was really dating Shin Jae-young. She was put on the spot and got nervous a little, but she doesn't deny it. She says that they just started dating somehow and that she was about to tell him. Kang was speechless. He didn't know what to say. We see a flashback where Sujin's drunk dad was looking for her after she ran away. He used to beat her after getting drunk. We see Kenji and Sujin hiding together. This is when she told him that she was never going to marry someone like his father. She was going to marry someone who was kind, like Kenji. This is when Kenji decides to become a really kind person for her. End of the flashback. Now in the present, Kenji confronts her about what she had said in the past, how she wanted to date someone who was kind, and Shingyun was far from being kind. He was a bully. To which she replies that she dated a kind and friendly person once, but he was just too boring and nice all the time. A bad guy, on the other hand, they are rough, attractive, and way cooler. Kenji was stunned. All these years, his efforts to be kind to her were for nothing. She didn't care about nice guys now. She was into bad boys. In the moment of desperation, he grabs her hand and starts saying stuff like he was way meaner than Shin Jae-young. He was acting to be a kind person all this time. He was not just a bully. He was a gangster. A gangster's blood runs through his veins. He was saying all this while crying continuously, but she just laughs at him and calls him a kind person who was worried about her because she was dating a bully. Kangjin tries to convince himself it is all right for her to date a bully. On the way to their home, Shin Jae-young takes Sujin with her and wants Kenji not to hang out with her anymore. Sujin stops him from picking on Kenji and takes him with her while flirting in front of him. Kenji couldn't take it anymore. He had spent the last 10 years of his life trying to act kind even when it was hard, and all of that was for nothing. So he decided to become a bad person himself. When he was saying a gangster's blood runs through his veins, he wasn't lying. When he enters his home, all gang members are bowing before him. His household was a gangster household, and he was going to show her what a really bad person looks like. He asked about where his uncle was and came bursting through the door and asked him to help him become a bad person. His uncle didn't know what happened to him all of a sudden, but he wanted to see this look on his face for a long time. He had worked hard for the past 10 years to become kind, so his uncle warned him that it would only take an instant to become a bad guy. But Kenji was ready to abandon all the work that he put in for the past 10 years. The first thing his uncle told him to get rid of was his good and nice boy vibes. He needed to change his dressing sense as well, and he was also prohibited from smiling nicely. He needed to put on a serious face all the time. His uncle asked him why he wanted to become a bad person all of a sudden, to which he replies that he has no reason to be kind anymore while thinking about Sujin and Shin Jae-young. Even though he asked for their help, He still wasn't sure if could become a bad person like them. His uncle number 2 comes to his room to dress him up for the occasion. Kenji comes out wearing gold chains and all, just like a thug or gangster. He was hesitant if he could really wear this in school, but his uncles assured him that he looked great. When he was walking down the school hallway, everyone was staring at him. He wanted to greet them badly, but his uncle prohibited him from doing that. When a girl greets him, he tries to be rude to her but starts stuttering. When he enters the class, his friends greet him and he tries to be rude to them too, but he stutters again. Everyone was wondering what was wrong with him today and why he dressed like that. Sujin sees him and asked him to go to the cafeteria with her. He couldn't say no to her and agreed to go in a rude way. Everyone in the class thought they had a fight. Kenji was giving her the cold shoulder on their way. She asked him why he was giving her a cold shoulder and that he was acting like a different person. Kenji doesn't deny it, but he tells her that she was the one who changed first. After that, he told her to head to the cafeteria by herself. 10 years ago, he changed himself because of her, and now he was changing himself again because of her. This was the first time Kenji was skipping class. Behind the school building, he sees Shin Jaeong and a bunch of other guys skipping classes and smoking. Shin Jaeong goes to eat something outside with a girl. Kenji wanted to learn what guys like them do when they skip school, so he follows them. He sees both of them being chummy with each other and wonders if he is dating this girl too. He couldn't take it that Shin was taking Sujin for granted. He was furious. They arrive at Shin's house. The girl just wanted to go to a ramen shop, so she refused to go inside. When he starts forcing her to come inside, she slaps him, which makes him angry. He was about to slap her as well. Kenji was not sure if he should call the cops on him. He decides to take matters into his own hands and throws a rock at him, but it hits the girl instead. He had messed up big time, but he was not giving up just yet. He throws another rock at him, but his ring gets thrown away as well. This time the rock hit Shin straight to the forehead. While Shin was figuring out what was going on, Kenji took her hands and ran away, while Shin screamed at him to kill him. The girl also yells at him for hitting her in the head, but she understands that he is trying to help her and goes along with him. Even though he did manage to pull that off on impulse, he didn't know what to do next. He stitches her up and explains the situation, but she already knows and jokes about it. She introduces herself as Yeji. She was in the same class as he was, but she didn't recognize him. When he introduced himself as Kenji, she was shocked. He had heard about him that he was kind to everyone and experienced it firsthand. But Ken keeps telling her that he is not kind, he is mean. He only helped her because she was in a serious situation. He asked her if she likes bad guys like Shin Jaeong too. She told him that she liked guys who were free-spirited but not someone like Shin. Kenji wonders if he would be able to become a trash like him as well. While she was laughing at him, Shin called him. Kenji asked her not to mention his name. Shin was pissed and asked him about the guy who helped her because he was wearing the same dress as their school. But she also threatens to go to the police if he ever talks to her like that and hangs up the phone. She didn't want the police to get involved herself because she was the one who hit him first. She thanks Kenji and leaves. During lunch, his friends asked him why he looks like Shin Gyeong. This makes him happy because he is trying to look like him. His friends freak out after hearing that. Just then, Yeji comes there to eat lunch with him. She told his friend that he helped him, but Kenji left first because he didn't want anyone to know about that incident. Yeji goes with him too. His friends were happy for him on the outside, but inside, they were super envious. Sujin also sees both of them working together. The teachers had asked for Kenji because he skipped a class. He didn't want to make them angry and started taking off the gold chains and all the accessories. He realizes that his ring is gone. That ring was given to him by his second uncle who had got it from the boss himself. It was very precious to him. Kenji was panicking when he lost the ring. While he was looking for the ring in his class, Shin Jaeong came there and kicked him for blocking his way. Shin noticed that his back looked similar to the guy who threw that stone at him. He starts stomping on him and takes his anger out on him, while Sujin is just standing there and watching him get beaten up. Just then, Yeji comes there and stops him, saying she was the one he should be angry at. He asks her again who was the guy who helped her, but she didn't answer him. As he was about to hit her, Yeji started thinking, who is he afraid of other than the teachers? She told him that the guy's name was Song Jing-sik. We see Song Jong, who was a muscular guy and was sleeping in the class. Shin was scared of waking him up, but he couldn't just leave it be. So he tries to wake him up, and when he doesn't wake up, he kicks his desk, shocking everyone in the class. Yeji thought he would leave him alone because he was scared of him, but her plan was now busted. Songjing was annoyed by him. Shin asked him if he was the one who helped Yeji that day. Songjing sees Yeji and Kenji and says that he might have helped her. Shin gets angry, grabs Song by the collar, and threatens to finish him. Song just grabs his hands, making Shin come to his senses and realize who he was messing with. He lashes out at Yeji and the class for staring at him. While leaving the class, he takes a closer look at Kenji, saying the guy looked about his size though, but there was no way a loser like him could attack him, and he left after that. Kenji noticed the ring that he was wearing, which belonged to his uncle. Yeji immediately comes forward to help Kenji, while Sujin is jealous and angry seeing Yeji being friendly with him. Yeji asks Songjing for help, but Kang leaves after saying he is alright. While coming back home, he wonders how he should explain this to his uncle. When he enters the house, everyone is baffled and furious seeing his brushed face. They were preparing to on war with whoever did this to him. His second uncle also sees the commotion, and when he is filled with what is going on, he is ready to fight. But the first uncle stops them, saying he needs to fight on his own. They have a strategy meeting to make him strong and good at fighting, but before that, he needed to score one victory on his own. His uncle suggests he beat someone weaker than him in a fight. After that, they would start his training. The next day, everyone wishes him luck. He was already panicking over how he should get back the ring from Shin, and now he also had to fight someone. Just then, sees the grandma whom he used to help, but he remembers what his uncle told him and runs away while crying. Coincidentally, he meets the grandpa he used to help as well, and again he runs while crying. Then he sees a few thug school students who cross the road while the traffic was on. He also wants to do that, but when he tries, he gets scolded by a truck driver, making him apologize to him instinctively. He waits for the next round and runs as fast as he can. This time, he managed to cross the road while the traffic was on. On the way, he sees Sujin and is about to greet her when he sees Shin Jaeong with him. He hides from them and sees that she looks happy with him, so he decides to work even harder to become a bad person. He sees Yeji and a few other girls extorting money from the same guy who was being bullied the last time. The other girl told Kenji scram, and the kid thought he was saved now that he was here. Yeji starts doing her makeup after seeing Kenji. Instead of helping him, Kan orders him to give all the money he had to him or he would beat the shit out of him. His second uncle was watching all this and got emotional seeing their young master grow. It was like seeing his younger self. The girls were impressed by Kenji, saying he looked like a real man. But Yeji was not happy with this. The guy gives him the money thinking he was just faking it and would give him back after taking it from him. Ken splits the money and gives it to the girls. The girls say that he is on the same level as Shin Jaeong, which makes him happy. But Yeji is not impressed by this. While his uncle was going back, he bumped into Shin Jaeong and saw the ring on his fingers. He is confused and shocked to see his ring and wonders if he is Kenji's friend. Shin keeps getting on his nerves, but he didn't fight him. He was praying that this guy wouldn't be his young master's friend so that he could beat the hell out of him. At the school, the chief teacher calls Kenji to the office. He told him to bring his father the next day because he was becoming a problem child. But Kang immediately denies it because he knows it wouldn't be a good idea to bring his father there. The other teachers were surprised to see Kenji talking back. Kenji made an excuse saying his father was out of town and asked him to let him bring his uncle instead. Kenji's friend was worried about him and followed him to the office. He freaked out when he heard that they wanted him to bring his parents, but he was surprised to see him calm. At the house, he told his uncles that the teacher was asking to meet one of them. Every one of them wanted to be the one to go with him, so they decided to solve this with rock, paper, scissors, and the winner was the second uncle. He mugs the first uncle but gets smacked instead. The next day, the second uncle was ready to go to school with him in his very normal and formal dress. Kenji was speechless after seeing his second uncle's drip and just asked him to hurry up. On the way, people suddenly start to greet the second uncle, making Kang wonder how could he be so respected with that outfit and non-threatening face. The second uncle asked him if he was doing any bad things. The uncle then taught him how to spit like a gangster. He even showed him how to work like a man and ordered him to work like that until they arrived at the school. Kenji was embarrassed and wished that the first uncle was here with him. He wished that he hadn't run into Sujin. The students recognize Kenji, but they wonder why he was with a gangster. When they arrive at the school, the second uncle asks him if he still has the soul ring that he had given to him. Kenji gets nervous and lies to him, saying he put it in his room to keep it safe. In the hallway, Yeji sees him with his uncle and is confused as to why he is doing this. Kenji hides his face from her. Kenji showed him the teacher's office and told him that he had to get to his class, but he wonders if he is going to be okay. When he arrived in the teacher's office, The teachers couldn't believe that he was Kenji's uncle. They even considered calling the cops on him, but the head teacher assured them that he would take care of him. The junior teachers were impressed by him. The head teacher took him to the consultant room to talk to him privately, while the other teacher admired his bravery. But as soon as he got along with him, the head teacher started sucking up to him, praising how they treasure Kenji the most. He even poured him some tea to please him. The teacher asked him why he called him here. It was because Kenji was misbehaving lately, even though he was the next candidate for the school president. The second uncle asked him if he is calling Kenji the problem child, with a slight smile on his face. The head teacher thought he was mad and took it back, which made him mad for real this time. The second uncle was happy that Kenji was being a problem child. The head teacher was confused, but he knew that they needed to be on the same frequency if he wanted to live, even though he didn't know why. He just felt like he should say that he was a very problematic child. The second uncle was glad to hear that. Then the second uncle asked the head teacher if there were students who were extorting valuables from other students. The head teacher freaked out and denied that allegation. The second uncle left in anger after that. The head teacher was finally relieved that he left. The second uncle thought about the bully who stole his soul ring and wondered if could meet him. He was fuming with anger, although he wanted to find that guy and kill him. But he remembered what the first uncle had told him about letting Kenji fight his own battle. Jeongcheol got lucky this time. On the other hand, Jeongcheol was staring at the ring and was planning to sell it and buy a motorbike with that money. He was thankful that he got hit by that rock. In the class, Kenji was worried about the meeting. He asked his friend if he thought that the meeting went well. His reaction said it all. Just then, the head teacher entered the class and avoided eye contact with Kenji. Kenji wondered if his uncle threatened the teacher. He was going to ask his uncle directly. Kenji interrupts the class, asking him for permission to go to the bathroom. The teacher got angry, but when he saw that it was Kenji, his demeanor completely changed, and he permitted him to go. This made him sure that something must have happened between them. He called the first uncle, but he was busy doing something important. They were throwing a surprise party for Kenji for being a problem child. The third uncle handed him the phone. When King asked what he talked to the teacher, he says that he took care of it, which made Kenji even more anxious. Before he could ask him more, the first uncle took the phone and reminded him of the mission that he had to carry out that day, to beat up someone weaker than him. After he hung up, Ken started his search for someone weaker than him. He put himself on a level 1 scale to compare his strength to the other students. He saw 2 students coming toward him and wondered if he could beat him, but they were slightly stronger than him. He kept looking for someone weaker than him, but he couldn't seem to find someone. Even his friends were stronger than him. He got tired of searching, but he couldn't find anyone weaker than him. He was pondering his head in the bathroom when the big guy, Sungjin, asked him to move out of the way as he was blocking the sink. We see that Sungjin was on level 70, a number he could only hope to achieve. He says to himself how someone like him should have been the son of the Fire Bear Gang's boss. When he thought there was no one weaker than him, the guy whom he used to save from bullies, and the guy from whom he extorted money today was there. He was asking for the $40 that he pretended to extort from him. Kenji lit up seeing him. The guy was on level 0. While the guy was complimenting how real his acting looked this morning, Kenji grabbed him by the collar and asked him to become the sacrificial lamb for his first victory. Kenji apologized to him before attacking Sengu. While Sengu was confused about what he did wrong, he asked Songjung for help. Kenji didn't realize he was still there and thought he was done for, but instead of helping him, Songjung just left without saying anything. This was Kenji's chance. All he needed to do was to just hit him once. He even closes his eyes to do that, but even then he can't do it and lets go of him. Sengu ran after getting released while cussing him. He couldn't bring himself to hurt him. He wondered if he was mean and if he had finally become a bad person, but it didn't feel as great as he had hoped. All this time he put in being a kind person was going to disappear just like that. He remembers the times when he saved the guy. Even though he just grabbed him by the collar, he felt horrible, but he was determined to be a mean person for Sujin. The only reason he was living as a kind person was for Sujin. But now he had no reason to do that. When he got to the class, everyone was looking at him as Songgu had told the whole class about the incident. Sujin didn't believe it and asked Kenji if what he was saying was true. Even the other classmates didn't believe he could do something like that. When Sujin kept asking him, Kenji asked him to just stop. He pointed out how she used to hate people who put on makeup and did not dress properly. But now look at her. But Kenji wasn't criticizing her. Instead, he gave her a compliment that she looked good. But unfortunately for him, Shin Jeong-cheol heard him giving her compliments and thought he was flirting with him, even though he had ordered him the last time to be away from her. Kenji tried to explain the situation, but Shin slapped him and asked the other to grab him. He needed to teach him a lesson. Shin started beating him. He punched him in the stomach, but as he was going to hit him again with his dominant hand, Sujin asked him to stop. Seeing them covering for each other, Shin figured that something was going on between them, just like he had thought. He left Kenji alone for a moment and was about to beat her up first, but Kenji screamed at him to stop while calling him human trash. He was okay with him dating her, even beating him in front of her, but he was not going to let him beat her. Kenji threatened to kill him if he even touched her. Even Songjung, who was sleeping, woke up from his scream. Sujin had never heard him say those words before and was surprised. Shin Jian makes fun of him, pointing out what kind of situation he was in. Kenji again thinks about the past and how Sujin changed to date someone like him, but he was going to beat his boyfriend to become the bad guy that she liked. Kenji was expecting to get him, but he tried to hit him first with his leg. Before Shin could hit him, he got hit in the face instead. But it wasn't Kenji who hit him. It was Sungju. Everyone was baffled to see Sungju getting involved. Shin screamed at him saying he had gotten insane, but Sungju didn't stop and gave him another punch. Meanwhile, his friend didn't even try to get involved as they had no intention of dying. Shin asked him again why he was butting in and why he always messes with him. Sungju told him that he was the only one who messed around all the time before hitting him with another punch, but this time he hit him with his dominant left hand. Shin was down after this hit. The others left Kenji and took Shin with them. Sungju offered him a hand and took him to the nurse's office, but Kenji was worried that his shoulder might fall off first though, from his heavy hands. On the other hand, Shin and his two lackeys were making plans to get back at Sungju, but even if all three of them were to attack him, they would still lose. He wasn't even using his full strength. He just punched him with his shoulder strength while sitting. The two lackeys were afraid to get back at him, but Shin had plans for him. If he couldn't beat him himself, he just had to tap into his connections. Sungju took Kenji to the nurse's office, and as he was leaving, Kenji asked him why he didn't stop him when he was about to hit Sunggu in the bathroom, to which Songjung replied that he must have a reason, because he wasn't the kind of guy to do something like that without any reason. Kenji felt bad as he was actually about to hit him without any reason. Then Kenji asked him why he always saves him from Shin Jeong. Songjung doesn't give a clear answer and just says that the guy deserves to get hit and that Kenji just happens to be saved in the process. He leaves after that without answering any more of his questions. In the cafeteria, Yeji was trying to befriend Kenji's friends, but the smart one of the two easily figured out that she was just trying to be friends with Kenji. The other friend told her that he didn't want to be friends with a bully like her. Yeji gives him a dry apology. Yeji tries to butter them up by asking if they have girlfriends. The dumb friends deduced that Yeji was trying to be his girlfriend. He immediately told her that he didn't like a bully like her, but he was okay if it was Yeji. Both of them had no idea what he was blabbering about. He kept talking nonsense, which started to piss off Yeji. She asked them for the last time if they knew what was Kenji's type. The dumb friend suggested she should ask Sujin, who had been friends with him for the longest time. The smart one thinks to himself how stupid he is. She came to them because she didn't want to ask her. She decided to ask him directly. After she was gone, the dumb friend asked the other friend if Yeji was into him. On the way, two of her friends told her that Kenji was in the nurse's office after getting beaten up. She ran to the nurse's office after hearing this. Her friends were worried that she might be into losers. Yeji was feeling anxious and was concerned about him not knowing why. She rushes to the nurse's office while stumbling upon things. We see that Kenji was trying to hold his voice while crying. When he heard the door opening, he thought it was the doctor and that she might see him crying, so he pretends to be asleep. She asked him about his condition while being angry at Shin Jeong. She didn't disturb him while he slept and left the food there. She left the room in anger and determined to teach Shin Jeong a lesson. After she is gone, Kenji wonders why she brought food for him. Just then, he heard someone else on the door, so he pretended to sleep again. It was Sujin on the door. He didn't want her to see his crying face, so he kept on his act. Sujin saw the food that Yeji left for him. She picked it up and threw it in the dustbin while exclaiming how Yeji was being annoying. and that Kenji didn't like girls like her. She was about to put her hand on his head, which made Kenji flustered. But before that, Songjung came there with the doctor. The doctor asked her if she knows how he got hurt. Both Songjung and Kenji were waiting for her response. She made an excuse to save his boyfriend by saying that he fell down the stairs. Kenji was holding back his tears, while Songjung was just disappointed in her. The doctor just thought that he must have fallen down the stairs while helping someone like always. She also says how lucky Kenji was to have a friend like her. After she left, the doctor noticed that Kenji was up. He was crying while holding his voice. The doctor thought he was enduring the pain so that Sujin didn't get worried. He asked her to just give him a moment. She assured him to cry as much as he wanted. She was not going to let anyone come in. Kenji cried his heart out after hearing her lie to save his boyfriend over him, her childhood friend. Meanwhile, Shin was asking his lackey to sell his ring in the market. Just then, Yeji comes there yelling at him. The other two leave the two of them alone. She lashes out at him for beating up Kenji. He pointed out that he was the victim today, but she didn't believe that he could be the victim. She was disgusted with herself for liking him at one point. Shin blames her for falling for him as he didn't approach her. She did. Meanwhile, Sujin couldn't get in touch with Shin, so she came looking for him. When she finds out Shin is with Yeji, Shin threatened to beat even her if she kept coming closer to him. He blamed her for liking him even though she exactly knew who she was. Sujin was shocked to hear Yeji lied him. Shin further goes on to ask her out even after all that. Sujin couldn't believe her eyes and started crying. Yeji obviously denied him and threatened to report him to the police. Meanwhile, Sujin was trying to convince herself that Shin was doing that because she kept hitting on him persistently. He was doing that to get rid of her, and that he might be a bad guy, but he would never do that to her. She came out asking them to stop crying. Yeji was surprised to see her there. Shin was fed up with these ladies making a fuss and was annoyed at her. Sujin asked him if he was really dating Yeji. Shin told her that he wasn't and that he was going to break up with her too. Sujin couldn't believe what he was saying. It was like her whole came crashing down. Yeji was surprised that these two were dating. Shin has had enough, so he left without saying anything. Yeji asked her if she is really dating Shin, and if she is okay, but she was too shocked to say anything at the time. Kenji left the nurse's office without any treatment. He was also trying to convince himself that she would have done the same thing for him if he were her boyfriend, and that it was his fault for not being her boyfriend. To do that, he needed to become a bad guy by beating someone up, but he didn't want to beat someone weaker than him. But there was one person he was fine with beating him, Shin Jeon. When he got back home, he noticed that it was unusually quiet. When he goes further inside, he sees all his uncles leaning on their heads. When he was wondering what was going on, he heard a familiar voice. It was his father's voice, who was slightly impressed that he was home even though he should be at school. And he was even dressed differently. Kenji was shocked to see his father all of a sudden after all this time. He asked him why he was there. His father ordered him to sit first. Kenji instinctively sits down. He was here after 3 years because he had heard about him being a problem child. Only then did Kenji notice the poster behind him, celebrating him being a problem child. But the father was disappointed to hear that he was the type of problem child who gets beaten up instead of conquering the school and any turfs. That's the reason all the uncles were in that state as a punishment. He states that he didn't give him 10 years to celebrate his getting beaten up. He ordered the first uncle to begin his successors training starting tomorrow. Kenji tried to reason with him, but his father reminded him how he gave him time because he wanted to be kind to a girl. But all this time, he was just getting beaten up. He also states that he would not force him if he rejects the training, but in return, he'd also not see his face for the rest of his life, meaning that they would no longer be father and son. He had no use for a pathetic and weak son like him, he said. Kenji burst into tears while telling him how hard the last 10 years were for him as well. He didn't choose to be born as the son of a gangster, and he wanted to live his own life. The boss told him that he was not going to wait forever for him to succeed him. He had already expected him to reject the successor's training and had a different plan in mind. He was going to cut all ties with him and told Kenji that there were a lot of people around the world who could be called his son, but he was hoping Kenji to be his successor. Kenji asked for some time to think about it, but he had already given him 10 years. He couldn't wait any longer. He had until tomorrow to give his answer. If he didn't accept the training, their relationship would be over. Kenji was devastated, calling him the worst father ever. His uncles were worried. They didn't expect the boss to come all of a sudden. Not only that, but if Kenji was no longer boss's son, their faction would also be discarded. The first uncle goes to talk to Kenji. He asked him how he was, and he if really got beaten up again. He asked him if he at least beat one weak guy, but he told him that he couldn't do it. The first uncle suggests why he doesn't get stronger, and then he could beat any bad guy he wanted, and asked him to accept the successor's training to get stronger. But Kenji says he still wasn't ready for it. The first uncle told him that he needed to grow stronger if he wanted to protect the things he cared about. He left after that. While Kenji was pondering his head over what he needed to say, he got a call from Sujin. She told him how she was having a hard time while crying. Kenji asked her for details of what happened. He is furious at Shin Jeong for making her cry. He goes to his uncle and announces that he has made up his mind. He was going to accept the successor's training to beat the bad guys. He was going to become the worst person. He requested his uncles to help him get stronger. They assured him and asked him to leave it to them. They've been waiting for this moment for 10 years. The first uncle informed him that he couldn't go to school during the training. Kenji agreed to that as well. This time he was committed to learning how to fight. The first uncle left him in his second uncle's care as he used to be an athlete himself. It was an emotional moment for the uncles. The second uncle asked him about the ring he had given to him again. He asked him to tell the truth this time. Kenji didn't lie this time and told him that he lost the ring to the guy he wanted to beat up. The second uncle told him that if he wanted, he could take it back from the guy in a few seconds, although that would be the easiest way to get it done. But Kenji wanted to get it back on his own after beating him. This is the answer that the second uncle was hoping he'd give. He hugged him and ordered him to change into the battle suit for their training. Kenji understood the assignment. Since he has decided to accept the successor's training, there was no turning back now. From this moment forward, he was no longer Kangjian, who was a normal student. He was not the Fire Bee Gang's successor, Kangjian. The story continues with the second uncle preparing Kenji for the successor training. He starts his training with the basic physical fitness training test. They start with the 3 common exercises, the first one being squat. He first gave him the empty bar to lift without any weights on it, but he was struggling even to pick that up. He could only squat 20 kilograms. The second uncle was looking worried now. Then they move on to the bench press. Kenji was ready to bench press, but he pointed out if he must help him in that position. Kenji could bench press only 20 kilograms as well. The second uncle realized that he was weak as F. He wasn't sure what kind of training he should give him. Then they move on to the last exercise, which was deadlift. The second uncle didn't have any expectations at this point, but much to his surprise, Kenji could easily lift the bar, even after they put on lots of weight. It was easy work for him. He told the uncle that he could go for it even more easily. The second uncle was confused as to how that was even possible. He figured that he must have built up his muscles from always helping others in need. To test his grip power, his second uncle challenged him to wrestle. Kenji said to him that he had no chance of winning against him. Even the other uncles were pointing out how unfair that was. But the second uncle had a theory for his source of strength, and he wanted to test that. The match begins, and Kenji starts overpowering him almost immediately. The other uncles thought he was going easy on him on purpose, but only the second uncle knew he was giving it his all. Even the other uncles started to wonder if he was overpowering him in wrestling. It was indeed the power of his grip that helped him deadlift. Ever since he was a kid, he has always given all of them body massages for 10 years now. During this time, his muscles grew, and he acquired a monstrous grip. The second uncle was proud of him, but he wasn't going to let him win easily, and he went all out. But even then, Kenji wasn't even budging. The second uncle lost eventually. He was sure that if he guided him to use his power, he could become the strongest person in the school. Even unifying a whole territory wouldn't be impossible. This was the first time he saw the Firebear Gang's image in him. The second uncle asked him to lie beside him and told him that he had the potential to become way stronger. But Kenji didn't believe him and thought that he let him win on purpose. The second uncle assured him that he'd train him in a way that he never lose to anyone again. And to do that, they'd need to start the closed-door training. During this training, contact from the outside world was prohibited. Kenji was hesitant at first, but the second uncle told him that if he wanted to protect what he loved, he needed to make this sacrifice. If he did that, He would make him the strongest for sure. Kenji agreed to the condition and they worked inside the training room like a man. 3 days had passed since then. Kenji wasn't coming to school. Sungjung wondered if something happened to him and asked his friends. They also tried to contact him, but he wasn't picking up their phone. They even went to his house, but seeing his uncles, they got scared and ran away. Sungjung was slightly worried about him. When he returns home from school, he is greeted by his little sister who is waiting for him outside alone. She told him how bored she was because recently that kind of oppa wasn't coming to play with him. She was talking about Kenji. She was worried thinking he might have fainted somewhere while helping someone as he did to her when she needed help. She told Sungjung to check up on him. Sungjung agreed to her request. He took his address from the school and came to see him. He encountered Kenji's uncles who were suspicious of him, but when he told them he was Kenji's friend, they treated him like a prince and let him inside. But the first uncle scolds them for letting anyone in without identifying their identity. Songjung was glad that he had his wallet with him. Otherwise, things could have been horrifying for him. The second asked about the purpose of his coming there. Songjung replied that he was worried about Kenji as he didn't come to school or accept their calls. The first uncle sees the judo club bag that he had and calls for the second uncle. When the second uncle saw him, he immediately recognized him. The second uncle reminded the first uncle that he was close to Lee Do Park, the guy he was going to introduce to him. They had a meal together once due to their mutual friend. They take him to the training room. Songjung was surprised to see Kenji training instead of attending school. The second uncle asked Songjung to spar with him, but Songjung thought that he was being unreasonable. There was no way Kenji was going to defeat him in judo, and there was a huge gap in strength too. But the second uncle advised him to watch closely, as what he was doing wasn't judo. Kenji grabbed the third uncle by the collar. Songjung points out that his positioning was wrong. He wasn't using his left arm, but only his right arm. There was no way he could do that without both of his arms. But much to his surprise, Kenji lifted him with the strength of just one of his hands and slammed him onto the ground, calling his technique a deadly one-arm throw. Songjung was speechless after seeing his crazy grip strength. It was illogical to see him do that with his physique. The second uncle says that he, Songjung, was on the same level as their mutual friend Do Park. He could be considered one of the top few in the country. Kenji wasn't looking for any gold medal. He just wanted to be stronger desperately to beat some guys. Songjung comes forward to spar with him without the second uncle asking him. Kenji was surprised by Songjung there. The second uncle explained to him that he wanted him to fight some his age, who was much stronger than he was. If he manages to stand his ground against him, most of the other school kids would be a piece of cake for him. But Kenji was terrified of him. He had been training for only a few days. The difference between their techniques and physique was huge. In the first round, Songjung completely overpowered Kenji. He didn't even have to use any of his techniques to deal with him. But Kenji gets up again, and this time he didn't get caught by Songjung. He stepped back in time and was now in a boxing stance. But Songjung could see his punch coming from miles away and easily blocked him. But even though he blocked it, Kenji's punches felt heavy due to his grip strength. Kenji then tries to tackle him, but Songjung thought to himself how foolish that technique was against him, who has way more weight than him. But much to his surprise, Kenji wasn't trying to tackle him. He started pinching him with his crazy grip strength. He started crushing his thighs. The pain was unbearable, so Songjung fought back but missed. Songjung didn't expect him to use an underhand trick like that. The third uncle gets angry at the second uncle for teaching him such a cowardly technique. He told him that he wasn't just pinching Songjung, but causing huge damage to his muscle with his monstrous grip. It was a different kind of acupressure. Songjung couldn't use his leg for a moment. Kenji attacked him again, which Songjung easily blocked. He asked him if wanted to take him on, but at this point, Kenji wasn't even listening to him. Kenji attacked Songjung while he was talking. He punched him in the neck, which pissed him off. Seong asked him if he was targeting his Adam's apple. Kenji apologized to him and explained to him that he couldn't reach his chin because he was too tall for him. But it was too late. Songjung calls his moves cowardly and is ready to take him on for real this time. A few moments later, we see that they both were out of breath and Kenji was on the ground. Songjung asked him why he lost to someone like Shin Jeong when he was this strong. The second uncle informed him that he never got into a fight and always avoided it cowardly. He used to get scared even before the fight started. That's why he needed to fight someone strong like Songjung to get rid of that mindset. The second uncle expressed his gratitude and guided him to the dinner table. After he is gone, The second uncle goes to check up on Kenji, but he is surprised to see him smiling. Kenji says to him how he was feeling refreshed after fighting. The second uncle cooks beef for them. Songjun was a little surprised because he doesn't normally get to eat that stuff. The second uncle was blunt and asked him to train with Kenji for 1 week and he would provide for his food and other needs. But he couldn't agree to come there every day during the night as he had a sister. The uncle asked him to come after his school, but he had a judo club after school. But the second uncle took care of that. He called his senior Du Park and told him that he was giving Songjun special training for a week. He promised to give him special training in judo after he was done practicing with the young master. While eating the meal, Songjun looked a little disappointed. Kenji asked him if he didn't like the food, but that was not the case. Kenji requests the second uncle for something. While Songjun is leaving, Kenji works out with him and gives him the beef for his younger sister as well. Songjun was happy and smiled slightly because he knew she would love it. The next day at school, Yeji kept messaging Kenji but got no reply. She was worried that he might have been hospitalized after the beating. Seeing her so frustrated, her friends realize that she is serious about Kenji. They suggest she goes to his home with his friends. That way it wouldn't be awkward. She calls him a genius for it, but then realizes that she didn't even tell them about Kenji and asks them how they knew. But it was so obvious that it wouldn't take a genius to figure out what was going on. But when she goes to ask his friends, they deny it. It was because they were busy pushing their rank in an online game. The smart one was on silver and the dumb one was on bronze. But Yeji trampled on their ego when she told them that she was on the platinum level. This turned on their rage button. She even told them her ID, which was Princess Yeji. They were baffled to see that she wasn't lying. After she couldn't pursue them with her, she was feeling down, but then she sees Songjun and asked him to go with her. He agrees to go with her. She thanked him for doing so, to which Songjun replied that he was going to Kenji's house too. She freaked out as she hadn't even mentioned his name yet. Songjun informed her that everyone knew about it at this point. She started flustering hearing that. A senior sees them together and asks his friend if it is her sister is with Songjun. This guy was the mutual friend that the second uncle was talking about. The leader of the judo club, Lee Du Park, he replied that it was okay if she was with him because he trusted him. On the other hand, Shin Jeong and his friend went to a jewelry shop to sell the ring. They were wearing suits so that they looked adult, but there was no one in the shop and it was empty. Only one bald guy was sitting behind the desk. Shin asked his friend if something was wrong because he was trembling like crazy. Just then, the bald guy started singing. A few men came running and they shut down the shutter. Shin screamed at the bald guy for trying to mess with them. We see that this guy was the second uncle. The second uncle accused him of stealing his ring. Shin realized that he was sold out by his friend who was still trembling. Shin told him the truth about how he found the ring on the road and he was ready to give it back, but the second uncle didn't want it. It annoyed Shin, and he was ready to fight him thinking he might not be all that strong, but the second uncle punches him in the chest with his knuckle ring. Shin was having a hard time breathing, and he begged him to stop. The second uncle warned him not to ever sell the ring and wear it wherever he goes, because the owner of that ring would find him and collect it from him. He threatened to kill him if he ever sold the ring. Shin agreed to all that, but the second uncle was still not quite satisfied. He points out that he has a lot of hair and orders his men to bring the shaver. Yeji and Songjun arrive at Kenji's place. One of the uncles welcomes them and takes them to the training room. Yeji was surprised to see Kenji's house and realized how rich he was. They meet the second uncle in the training room. She immediately recognizes him from the school. The second uncle remarks that he didn't know Kenji had a girlfriend. Yeji started getting flustered and said she was not his girlfriend, not yet, making others aware that she was into Kenji for real. When Kenji came out of the training room, Yeji was blushing to see him. He was looking way stronger than the last time they met. He asked her why she was there, to which she replied that he wasn't coming to school, that's why. This was their last day of the closed room training. The second uncle asked her to observe them, but she didn't know what she was supposed to observe. Songjun and Kenji were going to toe-to-toe against each other. Songjun compliments him saying he has improved a lot. The second uncle thought to himself how great of a choice it was to let him train with someone his age. Songjun grabbed him by the collar, so Kenji attacked his joint, but before he could do that, Songjun tackled him with just one hand, surprising Kenji that he could do that too. After they were done training, They sat to eat dinner. Yeji asked him why he was not coming to school or replying to their message, to which he replies that he was in closed room training. Songjung explained to her what closed-door training was. Now that his training was over, the second uncle returned his phone. He was about to take a look at what she had sent him. She freaked out and asked him not to read in front of them, to read it when they were gone. Kenji agreed to that. Songjung couldn't help but smile. Yeji confronted him for laughing at her. The uncles were happy to see Kenji having a good time with his friends. They had never seen him like that before. Songjung and Kenji leave after having dinner. They were still fighting each other over every small thing. The second uncle reminded Kenji that he should go to sleep as he was going to school tomorrow. The next morning, Kenji was ready for school. His uncle sewed wires in his collar to make it look cool. Everyone else greets them and makes way for them. When Kenji got outside, he was surprised to see all the cars. The second uncle told him that they were going to accompany him to school. Kenji wondered if he made a mistake by taking the successors training. When they get near the school, the driver stops the car and lets him work to the school on his own. Kenji was super happy that they let him do that. On the way, he saw Shin Jeong standing there and wondered what he was doing there all alone. Shin sees him and tells him to just keep moving, but Kenji smiled and said that he didn't want to. Shin was all alone and this was his chance to get back at him. Shin was already annoyed while waiting for someone, and now Kenji was pissing him off even more. Kenji asked him to show his right hand because there was something that he was looking for. We see that Kenji's hands are looking kinda chiseled from all the training that he has been doing for the past week. While Shin was getting angrier, Kenji suddenly came closer to him, startling him. He used his technique called pickaxe and dug his fingers into his shoulder. Shin screamed in pain and was baffled at what he was doing. He kicked him off of him and threatened to beat the crap out of him. Just then, he saw something shining in the dark. It was the second uncle, who signaled to him that he was going to die. At first, Shin didn't understand why he was there. Then after thinking about it for a minute, things started to make sense to him. The guy who threw a rock at him was none other than Kenji, and the owner of the ring was also him, meaning all of the humiliation that he was getting was because of Kenji. He couldn't control his anger after deducing it. He screamed his lungs out and charged at him while screaming he was going to kill him. But Kenji caught his punch. He remembered what the second uncle had instructed him, how he should use his unbelievably strong grip strength, because once the opponent is caught, he'd feel hell. Kenji crushed his fist like a potato. Shin didn't understand what was going on. He wondered if he was the same loser Kenji that he knew. But even if his grip was strong, there were still limitations to what he could do, and Shin knew this. He started punching him, and all Kenji did was block it, even though it hurt. But this was nothing compared to Songjong's punches. Just then, Shin looked at the second uncle and remembered what he had instructed him. While trimming his hair, he had ordered him to get beaten by the owner of the ring and let him take the ring away, but make it look natural. Shin blamed his friend for selling him out, but the second uncle informed him that he tried to cover for him, and the result was him getting his hair trimmed down as well. Not only, but he also lost his eyebrows when he tried to run away and got caught. Kenji asked him if he was going overboard as they were just students, but the second uncle didn't care if they were just students and threatened to hunt him down if he tried anything funny. Shin Jeong-chil swallowed his pride and accepted every condition. Now in the present time, Shin couldn't believe he was going to get beaten by a loser like him. His pride won't allow this to happen, but he knows he's dead if he hits Kenji even once. He stopped his punch midway and brought his face forward to let him hit. Kenji punched him hard, to the point his nose started bleeding. But Kenji didn't understand why he did that and asked him while giving him a hand. Shin wondered why he was being friendly all of a sudden, but he wasn't being friendly. He just wanted the ring. He used his pickaxe technique on him again and took away the ring from him. He couldn't believe he finally did it. His uncles came out of the shadows to congratulate him. Kenji asked them what they were doing there, to which they replied that they just got there. Shin didn't understand what was going on, why he was calling them uncle and they were calling him young master. After all of this, the second uncle asked him to get in the car again. He told them that he was almost at the school, but they insisted that they had to drop him off in front of the gate. Kenji had thought he avoided it, but it was inevitable. Kenji's friend and the other students in the school were wondering why there were so many black cars in front of their school. His friend imagined they were some kind of gangster. Even the teachers were wondering who it was, But the head teacher already knew what was coming next. It was hella embarrassing for Kenji, but he didn't care at this point and just wanted to get this over with. All the gangsters get out of their cars and line up in front of the car to welcome their young master. Yeji also sees this and wonders if this is what she thinks it is. His friends also recognize one of the uncles from Kenji's house. Kenji got out of the car. All the gangsters bow before him and wish him a good day at the school. It was an emotional moment for the uncles because after 17 long years, they were finally able to drop him off at school. The friends of Yeji started interrogating her if she knew about it. And that's why she liked him, because being bullied was no longer sufficient for him, so she wanted to be a gangster. But Yeji was baffled and dumbfounded as well. The dumb friend asks the other friend if he knows that Kenji is the young master of those gangsters, but it was his first time seeing that too. Even his best friend had no idea. Kenji meets with Songjing on the way, who points out his flashy entrance. Kenji told him how embarrassed he was feeling. Songjing also commented on his weird work and asked him to do it properly. He was persistent in doing it. Lee Yiji's friend asks her not to just stand there dozing off and to get and hit on her. She calls for them and proposes to work together with them. Kenji's friends were also surprised to see him being this close to those two. The demo guy asks if he really didn't know. He didn't know because he hadn't been friends with him for that long. But the smarter, Jong-yoon, had been friends with him for 10 years now. It was weird that even he didn't know. Jong-yoon was disappointed but still tried to convince him that he must have his reasons. The English teacher was asking the head teacher to do something about it, but seeing the second uncle, he couldn't even move, because just that one guy was equivalent to 17 people. This wasn't something he could handle on his own. They needed to organize an emergency meeting. In the teachers' meeting, they were all against Kenji, but the principal didn't want them to say stuff like that to a guy like him. But even though the principal adored him, the fact that he was from a gangster family can't be ignored. The principal assured them that he would talk to him personally, but the head teacher remarked that it wasn't enough to just talk to him. He suggested they transfer him to a different school ASAP. The current student council president was also surprised to hear that. His assistant asked him how he managed to hide it from them all this time, to which he replied that he wasn't hiding it. He was genuinely kind to others, although he didn't have any ill intentions toward Kenji. But he couldn't let him be the next student council president. Their school was a role model to other schools, and their school would be ridiculed if the words got out. When Kenji entered the class, everyone started looking at him. Senga screamed at him, saying how he knew that he was a devilish person. The rest of the class also started murmuring about him, saying how he was a con artist. He was just acting kind to fool everyone and hide that he was a gangster. One of the girls asked Sujin if she knew about it, but she also had no idea. Seeing them talk like that about him was just too much for him. He remembered the time when they were all used to being friendly with him, but now they were talking behind his back and were terrified of him. Songjug and Yeji asked him if he is okay and why he wasn't getting in class. Kenji started panicking and was about to throw up, so he ran towards the washroom with tears in his eyes. He remembered what the first uncle had told him, but he took that lightly. But the worst was yet to come. On the way, he met his friends and greeted them, thinking at least they'd understand him, but the look in their eyes said it all. They were terrified of him and walked past him without saying anything. This was what hurt him the most. He couldn't stop his tears any longer. He asked them why they were acting like that while crying in pain. He asked them to wait up and hear him out. Jonghyun stops and in anger says how he didn't believe him when he said he wanted to become a bad guy like Shin Jeongchil, but this is how he was from the start. He was the son of a gangster. With a shocked expression, Kenji said that he was about to tell him when the other friend interrupted him. He said how he should have never gotten involved with him, and that he trusted him. Even though his uncles looked sketchy, they convinced themselves thinking that they just looked like that, but they were really gangsters. Kenji tries to explain, but he asked him to just answer if he was a gangster or not. Kenji had no choice but to agree with him. Jonghyun said to him that he should have at least told him about this. Kenji remembered the time 3 years ago, when Jonghyun saw some gangsters getting arrested. He expressed his hate towards them. His dream was to become a police officer and catch them all. The hate towards them had something to do with his past. That's the reason why he didn't tell him about his being a gangster. The thing he hated the most. Kenji tries to explain, saying he was looking for the right opportunity to tell him, but he points out how was it possible that he didn't get the chance to tell him for 10 years. He goes as far as to ask Kenji if he even considered him as his friend. Kenji was speechless and baffled. Just then, Songjun and Yeji came there and asked them what was going on. Jongyun told him to go with their new friends, the bully Lee Yeji and the top fighter Songjong, and that losers like them weren't qualified to be his friends. Songjun and Yeji didn't understand what that was about, but Kenji was completely devastated and fell on his knees.